Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Noose with Tim Lynch. I'm still Tim Lynch. Before we begin, I just want to remind you, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Like it if you like this. Give me a thumbs down if you don't, but please leave a comment one way or the other. Let's get the ball rolling. Today, I'm going to talk about a little bit of an older story. It's the story about the Brown University shooting. This was back in December of 2025. And yes, I've wanted to talk about this for a while. Got into a little bit of an inertial pit of not doing some of these shows, but let's hope we're out of that. So I'm not going to talk about a lot of things on this shooting. I'm not going to talk about the ineptitude of the law enforcement officers that were involved. I'm not going to talk about the fact that when the killer was found, it was basically because a homeless guy in Reddit tipped off the officers as to who this guy was, not through really their own police work. I'm not going to talk about how an Ivy League school didn't have appropriate cameras for their students' protection. Not sure that would have really made a difference in terms of stopping the tragedy. May have helped find the guy faster. I'm not going to talk about how the politicians and the law enforcement officers, when this guy was finally found, all got around and congratulated themselves about a job well done, even though they really didn't do much. But before you hear what I do think about, and yeah, you're going to hear it, let's do a quick timeline. So December 13th, 2025, Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, a 48-year-old Portuguese national who was a former Brown graduate student, shot and killed 2 Brown students and injured 9 in a lecture hall at the Barris and Holly building at Brown University. So B&H was an engineering building. 2 days later, so December 15th, he shot and killed an MIT faculty member in his home, Brookline, Mass. Now, 5 days after the original shooting. So now we're looking at December 18th. Valente was found dead in a storage unit after a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And honestly, anytime I hear mass shooting or school shooting, I always have a number of religious thoughts. It's always the same. 1, oh God, who got hurt? Who got killed? 2, oh God, now the left is going to try to ban guns again. And 3, yeah, Jesus, you know that everyone in that situation, right before they're killed or seriously injured, or even if they got out alive, wished they had a gun to fight back. But this one obviously hit a little closer to home because I went to Brown. And I know what you're thinking. How did you go to Brown? For those of you who don't know, but you probably all do, Brown is a very liberal school. In fact, at least at the time I went there, it was probably considered one of the most liberal Ivy League schools, which is saying something. In fact, I don't know if I had been accepted yet and was planning on going or was just applying, but one of my best friends from high school said, dude, you don't want to go there. I was like, why? He's like, that school is so liberal. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't know what that means. But obviously I went. But I will say this. Brown rarely makes the headlines for the crazy of the crazy school stories. It's very liberal, but it's actually fairly quiet about it. And they tend not to be super extreme. The super extreme stories tend to come from other schools. Don't get me wrong. They got the whole alphabet gang. They got the whole DEI thing going on, all that. But how did I get through? Well, I was in the STEM field. So my classes were objective. They were scientific. Most were hard classes. So I spent a lot of time, most of my time, studying for those classes, for those tests, for those labs, for those projects. Or, playing pickup basketball or hockey or volleyball, softball. don't tell anyone. I actually played intramural soccer for a little bit. Not proud of that fact, but hey, someone needed someone to join their team. I'm going to join their team. But, it's funny when you think about it, everything I did do there was merit-based. You either got the grade objectively or you didn't. You either won the game or you lost. And because of all that, I'm telling you, when I graduated there from undergrad, I could not tell you the difference between a Republican and a Democrat. I mean, I knew the words. I knew those were the two parties in our system. Couldn't tell you which was which. Couldn't tell you which one stood for what at the time. Don't get me wrong, I was conservative. I just didn't know what that meant or what label it was linked to. I just thought I had common sense. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't see political stuff going on there. Some of you have heard this story before. I still remember, I think this was freshman year. Yep, freshman year. I was going through the mail room. So the mail room is in the center of campus, and everyone goes there because everyone's got to get their mail. So it doesn't matter where you're living. You're all going to kind of congregate in the center. In the center, that's where one of the main greens are. So obviously a lot of students. So that's where people tend to hold their protests because they can get the most, visualization. But I remember walking through the mailroom one day, and there, was a table set up, and there were some Brown students. They wanted me to sign a letter to Saddam Hussein. Now, this is, during that first Gulf War, or right beforehand. And it was, sign a letter to Saddam Hussein so he's, stops dictating or something. Now, at that time, I could not pick Saddam Hussein out of a lineup. But I do remember literally laughing and saying, oh, yeah, okay. So Saddam Hussein is going to get a letter from Brown University from a bunch of undergrad kids in America telling him to stop having torture rooms or whatever and killing people. And he's going to be like, oh, yeah, now I get it. Let's call it all off. I mean, it was preposterous. More to the point for this story, I think, but this is something that I always talked about even before this tragic shooting. When I was there, is either my freshman or sophomore year, there was a huge debate on campus about whether Brown security should be allowed to carry guns. Now, mind you, there was the Providence Police Department, but independently Brown had their own security force, and they were trained to carry guns. They just weren't allowed to carry guns. Now, again, at the time, I'm like, well, yeah, they should carry guns. I mean, if something's going on and I'm being attacked or robbed or whatever, I want them to be able to save my life and have all the tools necessary. To me, it was a no-brainer. And honestly, I was not a gun guy back then. I still, I was still the guy that, you're watching a movie and the guy's in his car driving someone and he reaches over and he opens the glove box and they see that there's a gun there and everyone in the movie theater goes, oh! Even I was like, oh! So not a big gun guy. I wasn't anti-gun. I just was kind of probably like most people. But anyway, I mean, I even thought the line, guns don't kill people, people kill people. I used to think that was hilarious. I mean, it was just, redneck, white trash, stupid, I mean, I knew technically it was true, but I knew it was like, oh, it's making fun of like gun people. Now I know it's true. Silly me. But anyway, the big argument at that time was that the police officers might kill a Brown student. Now, I was 18 or 19 at the time, again, depending on the year. And I just thought, well, that's kind of dumb and kind of out of nowhere-ish. I mean, honestly, that could happen to anyone. I mean, police have guns too. Police could accidentally shoot someone too. But it was funny because back then they said, the police should have the guns. That's why we have the police department. Brown security shouldn't have them. Now they don't even want police carrying guns. Now they don't even want police. Strange. So, of course, when this tragic shooting took place in 2025, one of my first thoughts was, shit, do they still have the no guns policy? Fortunately, the answer was no. I was talking to one of my buddies who I graduated with, and he said in 2006, Brown University did allow security to get guns. And in 20 years, they shot no Brown students. And when I say Brown, I mean Brown University, not the alternately pigmented. Either way, nobody Brown got shot. But now let's go to kind of my real thought on this. And yes, it's guns. And no, I'm not going to say anything really new or groundbreaking, but I think I'm going to say something that needs to be said again. And hopefully someone who doesn't know this, it will be new and they will understand. So to start with, why does the phrase school shooting exist? And you might be like, well, because people are shooting at schools. It's like, well, right, but there's no business shooting. There's no playground shooting. There's no term park shooting. There's no another police station shooting. Although that was a good scene in Terminator. But again, neither here nor there. But why is the phrase school shooting? Why does that phrase exist? And that's because they're gun-free zones. At least for the innocent, law-abiding people, they are gun-free zones. And Brown, as a school, as a liberal school in a very blue state that hates guns with very strict gun laws, it is a gun-free zone. Or what gun people refer to as a target-rich zone. You see, when you look at mass shootings, and I'm talking about the kind the left likes, 94% occur in gun-free zones. And when I say the kind the left likes, what I mean is that statistic does not include shootings that occur during a robbery, for example, or gang shootings or drive-by shootings. Basically, shootings that are, nonsensical, just shooting of innocence for no clear reason. And 94% occur in gun-free zones. They're soft targets. And it's not always the numbers. When you look at studies, don't just look at the numbers. The numbers have to make sense. The numbers have to have reason. There has to be a way it makes sense for those numbers to be true. And of course, this makes sense. Number one, if people are carrying legally and someone starts to shoot, they won't shoot up for very long. Now, let me give you an example. So occasionally, I will go to my local cigar lounge at night, where most nights, the people that are there, up to 80% will be carrying legally at that lounge. And if anyone came in and started to do whatever, shoot the place up, attack someone, you would quickly see the body's ability to be sponge-like in its ability to soak up 9mm rounds. So you might get away, if a gunman came in, you might get away with shooting one or two people, but you wouldn't get any more. Number two, if as a criminal, you have a target site and people are carrying, you probably wouldn't even start to shoot there. You wouldn't even try. So now we're going from, hey, I gave you an example of we might only have one or two, people injured or killed, to zero victims. Because the people know, I can't go there. I'm never going to get away with anything. And if you think I'm wrong, if you think, oh, that's not the issue, I still don't believe what you're saying, gun-free zones aren't the issue, it's still the guns. Well, then the numbers would reflect that, right? Shootings would occur at equal rates at all places. It doesn't matter of the gun carrying status. So you would see just as many shootings at schools as businesses, as police stations, whatever. You would see the same number of shootings at gun-free zones than gun-full zones. But 94% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. Nearly all mass shootings are in gun-free zones. So, how do we fix this? Well, I know what you want me to say. Get rid of gun-free zones. I love it. It's a hard question to answer. We can't just make gun-free zones illegal, since honestly, they already are illegal. Number two, on the Bill of Rights. Number 2 with the bullet. Number 2 on the Bill of Rights. Quote, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, end quote. By the way, I won't go into it now. There's a lot of people that don't understand how the commas work, but basically everyone can carry a gun. So if you do not let someone have their gun, in a public place at least, you're breaking the highest law of the land. Again, if you have your own home and you don't want anyone to bring a gun in your home, that's fine. That's your public place. And frankly, if you have a private business and you don't want to do that, hey, that's fine. But public places, public schools, grocery stores, bars, arenas, you have to let people bring in guns or you are breaking the highest law of the land. Now, here's the thing that kills me. If I break a law, I will be appropriately prosecuted. Jaywalking, speeding, stealing, B&E, assault and battery, A and B. You name it, I'm going to be appropriately prosecuted. But if you're a lawmaker, if you're a politician, and you break a constitutional law, the highest law of the land, nothing ever happens. Every blue state governor or mayor that makes gun laws that are illegal, does anything happen to them? Nope. Their law may ultimately get overturned, but they don't pay a fine. They don't go to jail. They don't even do community service. They don't even get kicked out of office. To me, that's the first change. If you as a politician break the law through your actions and ignorance of the law is no excuse, you should be prosecuted and punished. Now, the other fix, and I've said this before, is if you do have an area where you're instituting a gun-free entity, so again, your private business, school, movie theater, whatever, if you make that a gun-free zone, you are responsible for appropriately protecting the people who come in. So think airport. I'm talking metal detectors, armed guards, etc. And if you don't bring up that level of protection, you're responsible for everyone's welfare that comes in. So going back to the Brown University shooting, you have students, most likely just about all over 18, unless you were my old roommate, genius, who are not permitted to carry a gun themselves, as is their God-given right. Well, what happens? So you get slaughtered by a man who ran amok, who, by the way, had no problem bringing his gun into the gun-free zone. So if those were my kids, I would sue Brown. I would sue the state. I would sue the city. I would sue anyone else who was involved in allowing those young adults to be unlawfully, unprotected, allowing them to be murdered. And I think that's what people have to do in these settings. See, the left does not care about these deaths. In a way, they kind of like them. I'm not saying they like that people die, but they like that the fact that they have victims and deaths that they can use. They use these to pass more anti-gun laws, which sadly creates more deaths. If they cared, they'd allow people to protect themselves. They would allow the innocent to protect themselves. No gun-free zones, much less mass shootings. If they cared, they would teach guns and gun safety in schools. Think about that, right? We teach safe sex in schools. We teach how to swim in schools. So all of the injuries and deaths are much less likely to occur there. Why don't we teach gun safety? Less accidental shootings, less negligent discharges. And hell, if you teach it in schools, you make it a course that's required, guess what happens? Gun fascination starts to drop. Ask my kids. I teach them all the time. I'll ask them, hey, you want to go shooting? You want to see? I got a new gun. You want to see it? Believe me, there's no fascination there. And with that will become less playing with guns without appropriate supervision. Hell, lock up the criminals too, right? The left could do that, but they don't care about people's safety. They care about disarming the populace so that they can get greater control. So right now, we good, innocent people cannot carry a gun into a gun-free zone. We just can't. The only people who can carry a gun into a gun-free zone are the ones that want to shoot you. On that note, a friendly reminder, my house is not a gun-free zone. Not even fucking close. Pass the word, and I'll see you next time on the Daily Noose.